Welcome into the inaugural Big Ten Morning Minute. I'm your host, Michael Chen. I'll give you a quick rundown, very fast, of what I intend to do on this podcast. Every morning, I'm going to get you out some content, give you a little bit of look into what's going on in the Big Ten landscape. Ideally, I would love to not just read box scores and let you know what the hell's going on. As opposed to doing that, I'd like to get more down to the nitty-gritty, the other stuff, whatever else is going on, because it's pretty easy for you to read that box score, and I'd rather not read it back to you. So let's get right into it. It was a big weekend for football within the conference. Although no games were played, obviously, the national championship will be played this afternoon or this evening. But there was still some all-star games going on, and the Big Ten showed pretty well in those as well. There was some transfer news. There was some news that players were staying, players were leaving. So let's get right into it. Over the course of the weekend, the Army All-American Bowl happened. There was one commit that went to the Big Ten. Purdue took Dave Bell, the Indianapolis native, a very good prospect. He's going to the Purdue Boilermakers. On top of that, Purdue had another individual award go to George Karlaftis. He became the American Family Insurance Defensive Player of the Year. So that's a high honor for him. And there's going to be some pressure going on in Purdue because they're recruiting much, much better. So we'll see what happens. Jeff Brom staying obviously is a boon for Purdue and the conference as well, keeping the coaches, the best coaches in the nation, in the conference. Always a good idea. Not only did Purdue have a nice commit, but the University of Wisconsin had a good showing by one of their commits, quarterback Graham Mertz. He was very, very good in the All-Star game. I saw a couple of his throws. He's looked very, very impressive. He ended up only 7 for 14, but those weren't the big numbers. He had 5 touchdowns in the game, threw for 188 yards, and then he came home with the MVP. So very bright future for Graham Mertz and the University of Wisconsin. The Badgers are getting a good one here, and I think that with what they've had at quarterback and what Mertz looked like yesterday, I could see him potentially being the starter, especially with Alex Hornibrook not being as effective and being there for such a long time that everyone has been clamoring a little bit more for potentially getting a high-level quarterback, and this is the highest quarterback that Wisconsin has ever received, ratings-wise to the school. So obviously Russell Wilson was absolutely fantastic, but he was a grad transfer. So Graham Mertz is going to come in with a lot of pressure on his shoulders, but from the looks of it, it looks like he's going to be able to handle it and should be a good one and a player to watch out for in the coming years in the Big Ten. Ohio State also had a couple of guys playing in the game, but the one that stood out the most was Garrett Wilson. He's a wide receiver out of Texas. He caught 2 touchdown passes in the game, so very impressive for him as well in an all-star setting to show very well. And also, he won the All-American Bowl Men of the Year, so very impressive. Not only does Wilson do it on the field, he does it off the field as well. And that wasn't the only good news that Ohio State got. They're getting a transfer from University of Georgia and Justin Fields, and Fields was ranked as the number 2 overall prospect in all of the country last year behind Clemson starter Trevor Lawrence. So Ohio State's looks like the wheels are going to continue to move on the quarterback train for them. Although Dwayne Haskins has not declared yet, obviously the thinking behind all of this is with Justin Fields going to Ohio State, should be eligible to play right away. He most likely will be the starter, as you expect Haskins to declare for the draft, like Michael Jordan did over the weekend for the Buckeyes as well. The 3-year starter, one of the very few offensive linemen who can come into Ohio State and start as a true freshman. Jordan, obviously, when you get a head start and you're starting as a true freshman, the opportunity for you to leave early becomes better and better, and Jordan did that. Obviously, he didn't have much to prove. He was an All-American this year by multiple outlets, so he opted to leave. But there's some more good news about players returning for Ohio State, as safety Jordan Fuller decided that he was going to stay around for another season with the Buckeyes, so that's big, as they did struggle in the defensive backfield as they continue to churn out NFL prospects, and they're going to have some continuity with Fuller returning. The Fighting Illini had a really good weekend as well. Although it wasn't the All-American Bowl, it was the Under Armour Bowl. Shimon Cooper, the linebacker, top 300 prospect, ended up picking the Fighting Illini, so a good get for them. And on top of that, they're getting a 5-star transfer from Georgia in Luke Ford. So the Buckeyes and the Illini ended up taking some players after there was a huge mass exodus for Georgia this past weekend. So they were the recipients of a couple of good players there. So look out for Luke Ford. I believe he also should get a waiver to play right away, as his ailing, I believe it's his grandmother, needs to be closer to the family, and he is from the area. So look for Luke Ford to be on the field this year with the Illini, and hopefully Lovie Smith gets going in the right direction. Unfortunately for Iowa, they're losing one of their better defensive backs in Armani Hooker. He is going to declare for the draft, so we will see him in the NFL next year. However, there's a couple linebackers in the state of Michigan who opted to stay for their teams, as Michigan State is going to retain Joe Bachie. He's coming back, as well as Michigan getting Kahili Hudson to come back also. Good news for the Nittany Lions, as Steven Gonzalez will return for his senior season as well. So more Big Ten players actually staying over the weekend. However, there's still a couple of days where there's going to be news that they're going to come out. I believe they have until Thursday to declare whether they're staying or going. So definitely more news on the way for you on that end. And a little bit of basketball news. The Fighting Illini had, again, a good weekend. A couple commits and transfers with Cooper and Ford. And then the basketball team got a big man in Kofi Cockburn. He's a top 40 prospect, so really good get for the Fighting Illini, as they needed it. Brad Underwood's had a rough start to his year this year, and the recruiting is where you do it and where you win, and when you're getting top 40 prospects, you're definitely winning in that category. So really good job by Underwood and his staff to get Cockburn, and hopefully he's still there to coach him when he gets on campus. And lastly, for basketball news, Penn State coach Pat Chambers was suspended for a game on Sunday for shoving his player Miles Dredd after a nationally televised game where you saw him blow up on him, and that was not a good look for him, for Chambers, not a good look for the conference as well. So I think that Penn State did the right thing, but I think that one game might not be enough. I think that that's a little light on punishment, as a coach should never, as we should learn from the Bobby Knight incidents, coaches should never lay hands on players. So that was a huge mistake right there by the head coach, Pat Chambers. Hopefully we never see anything like this again. Otherwise, he's definitely getting the boot out of Happy Valley. And that's going to wrap it up for me for the Big Ten Morning Minute. I appreciate you listening. I'll see you tomorrow with more information on the Big Ten. Have a good day, Big Ten fans.